In this topic, I want to discuss converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. What's some important things to know about it? What are some of the pros, some of the cons? And then seeing if you do like this sort of strategy, how to make sure that you're setting this up effectively to really unravel where your current situation is, what your goals are, and then how individuals in similar circumstances have done this successfully and continue to do it successfully. To kind of take an overall, picture on it, the big idea of this is to try to make sure that you're understanding the main difference between the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA. And then when you are creating an account, or if you are looking to do this conversion, making sure that there is that customization in there and how to avoid the common mistakes when trying to set up that customization. Really, the crux of everything is understanding the difference of taxation between the traditional and the Roth IRA. The traditional is something known as a pre-tax qualified retirement account, and the Roth is essentially a post-tax qualified retirement account. What exactly does that mean? Well, if we break it down to very simplistic language and we think about it in the form of a bucket, we have a bucket that's a traditional IRA versus a bucket that's a Roth IRA. How does this bucket grow? Just like if you watched any of my other videos, it's by a very simple formula. Contributions and rate of return equals what the account balance is, or the account value. So if let's say somebody's making $100,000 in a given year, and they're trying to place their money into a traditional IRA, and all things being equal, they go and they place $5,000 into this account. At the end of the year, their adjusted gross income would be $95,000 because the $5,000 was the contribution that went into the bucket. That was the positive in the bucket. And then what also grows this bucket or decreases this bucket is the rate of return side. So let's say if that rate of return came back positive, you have the power of compound interest that's growing that bucket fatter and fatter. That individual received a tax deduction when they made their contribution into that account. So every year that they're placing contributions in there underneath the specific cap limit that somebody's eligible to do so, they would get a tax deduction. They would get a tax deduction. They would get a tax deduction. So that means that everything that's growing within this bucket by the combination of the contributions and rate of return, so whatever this account balance is growing to, that's going to grow tax deferred. So when they hit their ideal retirement age at 59 and a half or after 59 and a half, any dollar that they're pulling out of this account is going to be fully taxable. So let's say if somebody's receiving, pension income of 60 grand and they decide to pull out an extra $30,000 from their qualified retirement from their traditional IRA, their adjusted gross income, with all things being equal, would be $90,000 in that example because that $30,000 that they pulled out of their traditional IRA is fully taxable. So that explains this kind of chicken scratch on the screen, explains how the concept of a traditional IRA works. Now, a Roth IRA is essentially the complete opposite of that. So with a Roth IRA, let's say if somebody's making $100,000 and they say, hey, I want to put $5,000 per year into a Roth account. At the end of the year, their adjusted gross income is not going to be $95,000 because it's post-tax monies. Their adjusted gross income at the end of the year is still going to be 100 grand. Now, what makes these types of accounts special is when you're placing in that, let's say $5,000, it's going to be the combination of the contributions, which is obviously adding a positive, and then the rate of return. If that comes back positive, that's obviously going to grow this bucket further and further. Instead of it growing tax deferred, it's going to be growing with the power of compound interest tax free. When it comes time that somebody wants to ideally retire after age 59 and a half, any dollar that they pull out is going to be tax free. So this is very attractive for individuals currently because they're saying, we don't really know what's going to happen with the tax rates when we do hit those retirement years. It could be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years out from today. We want to make sure that we know whatever I'm placing in there, whatever this account is growing to, that those are going to be tax-free monies coming to me. I'm not going to have to, try to calculate if tax rates right now, let's say somebody's in a 22% tax bracket right now, but then in the future, even if they're making less money, if tax rates go up and that might be at 30%, by the time that they hit retirement years, that could be a large detriment. So somebody would go take their traditional IRA and convert it into a Roth IRA to say, I want to take my pre-tax monies and make them post-tax. I want to take this account that's growing tax deferred and have this account grow tax-free. If I want to retire after 59 and a half and start pulling my monies out, in that same example, let's say somebody's receiving pension income of 60,000 and they receive 30,000 from their Roth IRA account. This 30,000 is going to be tax free, as the pension income is going to be taxable. So they're able to net more dollars in their pocket because less has to actually go to taxes, at the end of that year. Also, a primary reason that individuals are really flocking to this traditional IRA to Roth IRA conversion is mainly based on retirement income, is how somebody could net the most amount of income from their assets when they hit their retirement years. And one of the main sources of income, or just a very important source of income when somebody hits retirement age, minimum age 62, is Social Security income. So you have something known as a provisional income calculator. And what provisional income means is it's a calculation to determine how much of your Social Security income would be taxable. So if you're underneath a specific threshold of your provisional income, 0% of your Social Security income could be taxed, but up to 85% of it could be taxed based on what your tax bracket is. So the different things that include provisional income are wages, self-employment related income, pensions, interest, dividends, capital gains. So all those different factors, if you have, let's say, a traditional IRA that you're pulling out $30,000 per year from, versus a Roth IRA that you're pulling out $30,000 a year from, as it currently stands with the tax code, and I recommend to speak with a tax advisor whenever leveraging this sort of component, the dollars that are sitting in the pre-tax traditional IRA, that would be incorporated with your provisional income. With the Roth IRA, those dollars are coming out tax-free, and that is not incorporated in your provisional income. So not only the income that you're pulling, let's say from pension income or from traditional IRA income, but also that continuous lifetime income source of Social Security income, if that's being taxed, obviously you're netting less Social Security income as well. So this is a very important aspect, that when somebody is nearing retirement or they're currently retired, how to make sure that they're taking the proper conversion techniques to make sure that, okay, this portion of dollars is at least now going to come to me tax free, and not only come to me tax free where I'll be able to net more retirement income, but then more retirement income from the Social Security standpoint as well. So that's obviously something that could be beneficial, but you want to be careful that you're not shooting yourself in the foot. The reason being is you can't just do a conversion and not expect to pay any monies when doing the conversion. Just like when you start pulling out income from your traditional IRA, when you do the conversion, that's when you're going to have to pay taxes on those dollars that are being converted. So you can't just do the conversion and say, "Oh, the government was great. They were so nice. They allowed me to just convert my monies and everything's great. Now it's sitting in a Roth IRA account." It's going to be treated, whatever dollar amount that you're looking for the conversion is going to be treated as taxable income for that year. So what I mean by that is, let's say if we have an individual that's age 60, and let's say they have 500,000 in their traditional IRA, they learn the concept of a traditional IRA to Roth conversion, and they say, "Oh, that sounds great. I'm not going to retire for another 5 years, but I'm going to go and just convert my money into a Roth IRA, my 500,000 into a Roth IRA." And maybe this individual, makes 100 grand. So they're in a specific tax bracket based on somebody that makes 100,000. If they do this conversion all in the form of a lump sum for that year, when let's say they're age 60, this extra 500,000 that was set up as a conversion is going to be added to their adjusted gross income for that year. So now that means instead of being in a tax bracket that's only making 100 grand, they're going to be hit with a higher tax bracket as if they were making $600,000 in that example. So maybe a proper way might be to say, okay, well, I understand if I'm going to be retiring in the next 5 years, maybe I should splice it out and say, okay, take 100,000, convert 100,000 the first year, 100,000 the second year, 100,000 the third year, et cetera, for these next 5 years, so that the 500,000 would get shifted over to Roth, but you're not doing it all in one big hit. So it doesn't jolt you into the next tax bracket, because when you're jolted into the next tax bracket, that's now a higher percentage of taxes you have to pay, and that higher percentage of taxes is on a higher overall dollar amount as well. So that's just some different things to be mindful of. The other important thing that's typically overlooked is not actually having a plan or not having a strategy when you're looking to do this conversion. It's not as if like a Roth IRA is just set up with a fixed account that's paying this enormous rate of return. It's just the vehicle, the bucket that it's sitting in. One bucket is sitting in a traditional IRA, the other sitting in a Roth IRA. But you still have to have a strategy on how those Roth monies grow. So, and one of the things that I always, hone in on is I always say there's a three things scenario. There was three things that you want to make sure are covered throughout your retirement so that you could stay retired forever. The first thing is going to be creating a proper income strategy. The second thing is creating a proper emergency strategy. An oh my gosh moment was to occur that you could actually pull monies from as a form of an emergency, something that's liquid. And then the third aspect is an inflation hedge, something that could beat out the pace of inflation, something that could grow your monies, your ancillary accounts, kind of your mess around monies. Make sure that that's on an upward trajectory for a growth related need. So how do you create that sort of strategy with your specific situation right now? And that's just really looking underneath the hood and saying, okay, well, what are some things that are important to you? When you're seeing, okay, with that individual that's currently age 60 that wants to retire at age 65, how does he make sure that they're setting up a proper plan to do this effectively when you're incorporating the Roth conversions in there? How much Social Security income is this person receiving? Are they receiving pension income? Do they have to leverage their assets, possibly create a type of annuity income stream to produce that other lifetime income cash flow that would correlate to the Social Security income? Is there a gap? What are their expenses? So that's the different things that we try to help out individuals to really understand what is their structure and try to help formulate a plan that they could be most effective with. So some of them, it requires that they have to add a little bit more towards an income-related strategy, and then others that they want to try to grow their monies and really maximize their accounts. Maybe they're a little late to the ball game of saving for their retirement. So maybe they have to take on a little bit more risk and make sure that they have those blended strategies of different investment-related accounts that are going to have high risk but potentially higher return, or make sure that they're diversified properly. Some individuals need a blended strategy where they're just saying, I want to make sure that my income is covered. I want to make sure my emergency need is covered. I want to make sure my growth need is covered, but I'm not, taking on more than I could chew. I'm not, trying to risk my assets. I want to preserve my assets and make sure that they're being structured in the proper areas so that it's not leaving, a downward market hiccup that could occur and completely destroy my portfolio, forcing me to work many years further than what I wanted to. So those are the different things to consider. So then when I'm saying, convert or not, converting a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA can mathematically be a great situation, but you just want to be very careful. You don't want to take on more than you could chew, especially if, let's say, you're already in a lower tax bracket. Why would you want to do that conversion if it's just going to end up hurting you, potentially in some of these shorter years, rather than helping you throughout the longevity of everything? The process, or some things to know about the conversion, is you want to set up a Roth IRA account first, and then once it's set up, you want to contact both plan administrators to see how that conversion could take place. So you want to make sure that it is acceptable. Sometimes employers allow an individual to take their 401k monies and roll that over into, or do a conversion into a Roth IRA, or do a conversion into like a Roth 401k. Same sort of concept with the traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. That's one of the things that we try to help individuals out to see what sort of Roth account. Do you want to have something that's more set up for a fixed Roth account, money market type Roth account? Do you want to go more towards investments, more like a brokerage type Roth account? Do you want to be more set up for like an indexing type account, something that will give you that lifetime income mechanism with like a Roth IRA annuity, so that when you actually trigger that lifetime income stream, it's going to be tax-free monies that will be coming to you. So there's a whole plethora of options available. The other aspect, which I touched up on, is do you want to do this in the form of a lump sum, or do you want to spread out that a little bit when you're doing that conversion? Because understand that negative to doing it in a lump sum is you're going to get taxed on all those monies that are being set up. Or do you want to spread that out? Does it make sense to do it because by the time that you hit retirement stage and your retirement age, that now your Social Security income, because you made this move in your earlier years, your Social Security income could be tax-free at that aspect because that provisional income is not currently calculated in there. Now, one of the things that's kind of a little disclaimer with it is all because the provisional income does not show that Roth IRA accounts are incorporated in that formula, does not mean that the IRS cannot change those laws later on. So this video, I'm creating this in 2022. Please make sure that you're checking whenever you're reviewing this video. Make sure you're checking out the details to see, okay, did they change that route, and would it make sense to still do the conversion, or am I going to get screwed with Social Security taxation, or Social Security income taxation, either route? So maybe that will deter you from making that conversion at that time. So just be mindful of the different things that could occur, in the future. Does it complement your plan? Is this something that you don't really have a plan right now, and you just heard it's a good thing, and you're just throwing a lot of monies towards this Roth conversion, but still not sure, not educated on how this works and how it could actually be effective with your specific situation, and actually complement what you're trying to accomplish throughout retirement. So those are just some things to know. The implementation of everything would be, creating a separate Roth account. What Roth account to create, that really depends upon what your situation is. But be mindful of like what's changed. Why is this now such an appealing offer versus the traditional status quo of put your monies in a traditional 401k, leave your monies in a traditional IRA. And it all comes down to tax brackets and where taxes are right now versus historically where tax brackets were, in the past. So during the older generation, the baby boomer generation, it was wise to place more monies towards that traditional aspect. And because tax rates were higher at that point, tax brackets were higher at that point in the 70s, the 80s, early 90s, all of that. And now you have tax rates are at all-time lows. On top of it, you now have this governmental deficit where individuals or indicators are leading that tax rates will be higher in the future. So even though individuals might not be making as much income throughout their retirement years, that doesn't mean that those lower tax rates or tax brackets are not going to be higher than some of the highest tax brackets are today. So those are some different things to kind of understand and really have that internal conversation to say, do you want to try to roll the dice and guess what those tax rates might be in the future, or do you want to essentially cut your losses now and say, I know with the Roth IRA account, those monies are going to come to me tax-free in the future, so therefore it doesn't matter what the tax brackets are in the future. If basically the rise of this governmental deficit and all these different things are leading, all these economic indicators are leading towards higher tax brackets, obviously that could be a detriment for the traditional IRA, for those pre-tax qualified retirement accounts. So that's the main, that's really the main thing that has changed, and that's why it's important, is because also there's a lot of noise out there right now saying, okay, if you're in a specific tax bracket or if you make too much money, that you might not be eligible to do the Roth conversion. So that's why individuals are trying to get in now before, if there were ever going to be a change in the future, that they're essentially grandfathered into what the current economic environment is right now that allows individuals to make those conversions. So that's kind of the importance of how things were in the past, what's changed, why is it important to kind of do the strategy now. And this is where we really hone in. We have a patented process known as a retirement diet plan, where we try to help an individual figure out what their key areas of financial planning are and how to make sure that each area is done effectively. Distribution strategy, how to make sure that figure out what your expenses are right now, what your expenses are going to be in retirement, and create a proper distribution strategy that will accomplish your income, your continuous income in retirement versus no longer working, and make sure that that's greater than or equal to your expenses. The next aspect is investments. With all your ancillary, your leftover monies, how to make sure that that's growing at a consistent basis to beat out the pace of inflation, to kind of leave those dollars as a legacy or leave it to a charity, whatever that case might be. And that's where estate/legacy planning comes in. And then most importantly, the taxation. That's really what's up the alley of the Roth conversions, the traditional IRA to Roth conversions, or the 401k to Roth conversions, and how to make sure that that is done effectively, and it's really in suit with what you're trying to accomplish and what you see as your ideal retirement. Your situation is going to be different than your neighbors. It's going to be different than your state is going to be different than other individuals, and based on how kind of that taxation works. So if you have questions, specific questions that you want us or you want a specialist to kind of discuss things further, feel free to give our 1-800 number a call. It's 1-800-566-1002, and we could, we could have a, a detailed conversation on that. Be mindful that a retirement diet plan, we do have minimum requirements on it for, the different clients that we try to bring into our agency. But, that doesn't mean that we can't at least have that initial conversation and really see if this might be a fit for, for both parties, and try to, set up a proper financial plan for you guys. But once again, I hope you learned some things. I hope you found value in this video. Feel free to call the 1-800 number, visit our website, retiresharp.com or fosseyfinancial.com. You can set up a calendar appointment that way as well. And, we look forward to helping you guys out. Leave comments, questions, thumbs up. Just let us know how we could better assist you with creating these videos, and really look forward to speaking with you guys. Thanks so much.